Let me tell you something. People are not helpful when you're at the water park and you can't find your son and his name is Marco. That's a solid joke. That's a Straczynski original joke, and more on that later. What are we doing this week? Two things we're doing this week. One, I'm going to be doing some reading assessments. The first one I put in Schoology. If you could take care of that after this video and the quick quiz that follows this video, that'd be super, and there will be more coming down at you this week. But the second thing, and the main theme of this week, is I'm going to take you inside my brain. And in case you're wondering, as a matter of fact, I am sure I have a brain. I have photographic evidence. Would you like to see a picture of my brain? I have one. Okay, it's coming. Now, see, here's how I got it. I had deviated septum surgery a few years ago, and the doctor was a real cool guy. And apparently, there is a small passage that goes from your nose directly to your brain. I guess that's the one those brain-eating amoebas take to do their damage. But he took a picture, and he gave me the picture. So I'm going to show you the picture. Now, it's not gross or anything, but if it's something you don't want to see, just as, kind of a heads up, here it comes. Ready? One. You can close your eyes. I'm going to count to three, then I'm going to put the picture out there. 1, 2, 3. Picture in my brain. Yep, there it is. There it is. All right, now, if you didn't want to see it, I'm taking it off the screen in 3, 2, 1. Boom, it's off the screen, and I'm not going to sneak it back up, no worries. If you changed your mind, you want to rewind, look at my brain, that's on you. But I'm not going to be talking about the actual physical, medical side of our brains this week. I am going to be talking about how we think when we take in information. When we read a book, when we read an article, when we hear a story, when you watch a movie, when you watch a show, or however this information is coming into your brain, I want to talk about the two different ways that we take it in. When you're thinking about your thinking, that is known as metacognition, which sounds like the name of a Transformer villain, but it's not. It's thinking about thinking. Now, there's two different ways that I want to talk about how we think when we're taking in information. And the first, I don't know. Maybe it has an official name, but I don't know about it. I like to call it open mind mode. So if you went out there and you just selected a book for yourself and you sat down, you cracked it open, you started reading it, and you take in the story, you enjoy the story, or when you're reading an article for the first time, or when you're hearing a story for the first time. When we do that, we keep our mind open to all the possibilities of what it is the author wants to tell us. And particularly in fiction, we practice something called suspension of disbelief. This is where you say to yourself, I understand this is a piece of fiction. I understand this isn't real, but I will allow myself to put aside disbelief in order to enjoy this piece. Now, I think we both know people that have a really hard time doing this. They often identify themselves by using phrases such as, oh my God, that's so fake. But here's the problem. They're saying that while they're watching a Rick and Morty cartoon. It's a cartoon. We knew it was fake. Do you think you've discovered something? But we also do this for even far more realistic pieces of fiction. It's part of the deal. It's part of enjoying the story. And when we do this, we allow ourselves to be emotionally affected by the information we're taking in. Like when we get to Romeo and Juliet both die. If you're taking in that play with a really open mind, it's a very sad scene. When it comes to nonfiction, you want to take in that information initially with an open mind as well. Let's see what the author has to say. But then there's a second way of taking in this information. I like to call this analysis mode. Let's look back at the joke that I opened this video with. All right? People are not helpful when you're at a water park and you can't find your son and his name is Marco. Now, from an analysis point of view, what helps make that joke work? One of the things that I think helps makes it work is the emotion behind the delivery of the lines. I start almost angry when I say people are not helpful, and then I subtly switch over to a little bit more desperation with when you're at a water park, and I try to tweak it so it's even a little bit more sad and stressful. I'm building tension when I say, and you can't find your son. That way, when I deliver the final line, and his name is Marco, that last line has a bigger impact. That's a common structure for jokes. Throughout this course, I'm going to show you some common structures for paragraphs, for essays, for story arcs, for all kinds of things that authors aren't bound to them, but they are proven structures to help the author affect the reader or viewer or whatever it is on an emotional level. Remember when we used to be able to go to see movies in theaters? Remember when you went and saw Infinity War? Do you remember what happened in the theater when Spider-Man, poof, dies? The next time you watch that film, that particular scene, I want you to notice how many other heroes, poof, turned to dust before Spider-Man. They structured it in such a sense that it builds, and Spider-Man's death seems almost like the most tragic of all because, I mean, here's a young guy who just wants to do good, and he reaches out to Tony Stark, Iron Man, and he tells him he's scared, and then poof, he's gone. If they would have had other hero deaths after that, they won't be as emotional. It's a specific structure that they used. When an author puts together a piece of fiction, that author is like God. Everything that happens in that story is because the author made it happen. In that open-minded mode, we could say, oh, if only Romeo and Juliet hadn't taken their lives in such a tragic mistake. That's fair. We can talk about these characters as if they're real. But the reality is, Romeo and Juliet can't do anything else because they're not written to do anything else. They have to do whatever the author writes. And when you get right down to it, there is no Romeo. There is no Juliet. Fictional characters are just ideas of people that are presented through words on a page. And when you get right down to it, it's pretty amazing that an author can put just some words on a page and it gives us an impression of a person, and we could bond with that imaginary person so much that when something happens to them that we actually feel some emotions. Well, you want to tell me you didn't get choked up when Spider-Man dies? When it comes to nonfiction, analysis mode is sometimes even more interesting because in nonfiction, authors are constantly manipulating logic, numbers, expectations, and emotions. And I know I've said in the past that word manipulating often has a lot of negative context to it. And I don't mean it in that way. I don't mean for it to be negative. I mean it as a very neutral word. But these types of manipulation for pieces of nonfiction, they're very real and they can be very effective. And I know this firsthand. I used to be a telemarketer. No, I've never called you or anyone else because I am worried about how close it is to the expiration of your vehicle's factory warranty. It was a different setup, and I will tell you about that later on this year. So I put together a quick quiz in Schoology about all the things I just talked about. So as soon as we're done here in just a minute, go check that out and answer that. If you need to rewatch any part of the video, it'll be there. And then when you're done with that, please complete the reading assessment, also in Schoology. That's about it for today, guys. See you tomorrow.